to the media and particularly digital news. And this is the new Reuters Institute Digital News Report. Now, this has been created by the Reuters Institute in collaboration with the University of Oxford. And I just want to go through some of the points that they make here, because most of it is a bit sort of whiny. But let's start off here. In these troubled times, a supply of accurate, independent journalism remains more important than ever. And yet many of the countries covered in our survey, we find the news media increasingly challenged by rising mis and disinformation, low trust, attacks by politicians, and an uncertain business environment. So some of this is good news, because the corporate media finding things extremely difficult in many, many countries around the world. And of course, whenever they talk about the rise of mis and disinformation, what they mean by that is the challenge of the rise of the truth. But anyway, we move on. They say our country pages this year are filled with examples of layoffs, closures, and other cuts due to a combination of rising costs, falling advertising revenues, and sharp declines in traffic from social media. Mark, I'm going to just ask you for comment here, because I'm interested to know what the situation in the United States is with respect to closures and layoffs and whatnot. But I'm also fascinated that what this report is clearly stating is the mainstream corporate media is starting to see the same type of restriction on reach that perhaps alternative media has been experiencing over the last few years for various reasons that we'll come on to. But what's the situation in the States with respect to layoffs and closures?
It might not be quite as dire of a situation, but it's happening in Canada too. There's all these claims that smaller newspapers, smaller TV outlets, radio, are experiencing a news desert. A news desert is resulting because so many of these things are either hanging by a thread or these entities are going out of business. Therefore, to fill the void, we need more of the legacy media's content. We need more of the mass media cartel's style of news. And nothing could be further from the truth. What you said is spot on, Mike, that truthful alternative media like ourselves, we don't have to hesitate in saying that, are gaining ground, maybe not always as fast as we'd like, but they're beginning to feel the pinch. So they have to label it mis and disinformation so they can kind of divert people's attention from what's really happening. And it's just a question of whether Congress in the US and the Canadian government will act to bail out or save these entities. And there has been legislation in the States, and the Canadian government has acted to try and salvage at least some of these smaller legacy media outlets. So they end up getting direct government money in the process, and therefore there'll be even more of a controlled narrative in return. So it's largely good news, really almost completely good news that this is happening, and they're just trying to mislabel it so people don't realize that the real reason they're going out of business, yes, there's layoffs, yes, there's increased costs, but the real reason at the core is because people don't believe the media anymore. And that is growing, and that is great news. That's the bottom line.
Absolutely, Mark. Thank you for that. So let's go on with this then. They go on to say there's no single cause for this crisis. It's been building for some time, but many of the immediate challenges are compounded by the power and changing strategies of rival big tech companies, including social media, search engines, and video platforms. Some are now explicitly deprioritizing news and political content, while others have switched focus from publishers to creators and pushing more fun and engaging formats, including video, to keep more attention within their own platforms. Concern about what is real and what is fake on the internet when it comes to online news has risen by 3 percentage points in the last year, they said, with around 6 and 10, 59%, saying that they're concerned. The figure is considerably higher in South Africa and the United States, both countries that have been holding elections this year. Well, I mean, that's nonsense in a sense, because most of the planet has been holding elections this year. So many countries holding elections, and to focus on those two in the course of that point is a bit daft. But they go on to say this: as publishers embrace the use of AI, we find widespread suspicion about how it might be used, especially for hard news stories such as politics or war. There's more comfort with the use of AI in behind the scenes tasks such as transcription and translation in supporting rather than replacing journalists. So they produced a graph which I thought would show, and this is showing the proportion of people that are uncomfortable with using news on the following topics, which has been produced mostly by AI. And there are a number of countries in the small print at the bottom there, including Africa, or in fact, a continent there, but including Bulgaria, Chile, Colombia, Croatia, Greece, Hungary, Indonesia, Malaysia, Peru, Romania, Singapore, Slovakia, Taiwan, Thailand, and Turkey, that they say have not been included in this survey for this particular set of statistics. But I find it quite disturbing that they're saying that 46% are uncomfortable about AI being used to generate political news, because that implies that there is a majority of people that are prepared that actually enjoy the fact that AI is producing political news. And I think this is a pretty dangerous direction to be heading in. And then finally on this, I just want to show the proportion, because Mark was talking there about trust, the proportion that trust news most of the time, and just looking at one particular region, which is Northern Europe, and we find the UK at the bottom of the list with only 36% of the population trusting most news most of the time. And I think that is an encouraging statistic. That particular one is an encouraging statistic because it demonstrates just how appallingly people view the news that's coming out of the United Kingdom. Mainstream news, because they're not talking about alternative news in these statistics.